Hey man, welcome back to Man Time. Today's episode, I am trying to find the best value in chainsaws for like a homestead chainsaw, for a do-all type of chainsaw, for a best value on a low budget, basically. You know, you're starting off on your homestead, you want a good, reliable chainsaw, you're going to need to be clearing out some forest, clearing out some land, managing some trees, cutting up some firewood, getting all that stuff ready on the homestead. Is this Stihl 028 going to be that perfect saw for you? Let's find out. I've got some work to do to it. Last time I was running it, I just kind of pieced it together. It was one of those cheap, $50 marketplace finds. I did get it running, but I had it kind of scabbed together. Let's get the fuel line fixed up, and then maybe some crank seals in here. I think those were leaking the last time I ran it. Welcome to Man Time. So, yeah, hard to believe this saw is actually pushing 40 years old. No telling exactly what year it is. The tag on top here is completely illegible at this point. It does say made in USA, Virginia. But yeah, this is kind of the start of the modern day pro saw. This was back when they just kind of made them all like this in the 80s, believe that. But yeah, it's got all the pro saw kind of stuff, right? Magnesium split crankcase, cylinder that pops on and off, and you can, replace out the piston fairly easily, just removing the top cover and, stuff on this half of it here. The air filter back here with the single screw to get at the air filter. Kind of this separated section here. I mean, all this stuff just screams modern day, pro saw, but this model actually came out, I think it was originally released in '77 with a little bit smaller piston. This one here, this is a frame of its own. There isn't any commonality between other Stihl chainsaws. This is kind of when Stihl started making very specifically laned chainsaws, where this one here, kind of like the 036, and I think before that was the 034. It's their smaller around, well, this one's going to be 47 cc's or somewhere thereabouts. 31 millimeter stroke, and then 44 millimeter piston. So I think it's 47 cc's or somewhere thereabouts. They made a super. I think that bumped it up to like a 46 millimeter piston. Am I way off on that one? 44 to 46, yeah, something like that. Anyways, with that 31 millimeter stroke, this was a very kind of unique chainsaw, where 32 millimeter was kind of the standard. Even in like back to the 031, I think that had a 32 millimeter by 44 piston. But yeah, this one is just kind of a real oddball, but it's really nice and lightweight. It has all of the pro chainsaw stuff on it, but it is really old and it needs some work. I originally got this saw for like 50 bucks, I think, off of Marketplace. But it is one of the more like affordable Stihl chainsaws that you see. Maybe one of the cheapest if you go hunting on eBay for one. So it might be something that is kind of desirable to a wider variety of people, just around 50 cc's, and a fairly lightweight unit that is still built like a professional grade of chainsaw. So let's dig in here and see what makes it a professional grade chainsaw, and then I'm going to show you how I got the fuel line to actually work for a little bit, and then we'll jump into getting these crank seals replaced out. Yeah, pretty hard to believe this chainsaw was actually, designed and modeled more than 45 years ago. Pretty incredible. I think I saw that the 028, before it was a Woodboss, came out in 77, which is pretty cool. But yeah, right down here is what I did for the fuel line. So I ran a piece of just regular, like 6 millimeter Echo line, and then I ran a bigger piece of line around it. It still ended up like seeping fuel, and it was definitely a temporary fix on there. But I did end up finding a rotary branded fuel line a lot of the no-name brands of fuel line are just not that great and have broken down in time with gasoline. Even the Stihl lines on saws that are like 20 plus years old, the rubber that they use is just not as good as like the Husqvarna type of fuel lines. But the Rotary brand is a really good brand. It's a brand that you're going to see from a lot of like the actual small engine repair shops. Rotary is a pretty trusted name there. So I was able to find one of those, 385831. If you're looking for that one, we'll go ahead and get this replaced out before we go on to too much of anything else. But I did want to just get a couple things going in the right direction here. To get this top cover off, you're actually going to need to get the spark plug off, unless you just kind of go to wrenching it out of there. But we'll get the spark. That's an old spark plug. I don't remember quite what I did to this saw. There's not going to be a link up there or over there, because I don't know how to do that. But everything else on this saw ended up working, with the problem being the crank seals are worn out. And that's going to be something, you know, with a 40-plus-year-old saw. The rubber is going to be the primary killer of these saws. And sometimes the electronics, but the electronics, you know, I typically have a pretty good luck with them. But yeah, the rubber and the seals are going to be kind of the first failure points. So that's what this one needs. Let's see if we can get this fuel line off of here and get it replaced. Alright, well, a couple of tools you're going to need for these is like a long pair of needle nose like that. Sometimes you might need like a 90-degree pair of needle nose or a hemostat with like a little curved end. The longer ones, the more kind of heavy-duty ones. Of course, the fuel line. You're going to need a replacement fuel filter, although I've already gone in here and replaced the fuel filter on this one here, so it is good to go there. And let's see here. Typically with these fuel lines, you want to kind of push it off of the nipple so you don't damage that nipple. I think on this one, yeah, this one I think is a plastic little barbed nipple there. But yeah, you can see here, see, this is just a standard piece of like Echo fuel line, and then what I did was I just stuck another bigger piece of fuel line down in that little hole. It was not a very good sealing system there, so I've blown it all out, and we should be able to get this one back in there pretty easily. Yeah, that's got the small end, that's got the big end, so I'm going to need a Stihl style. Well, that almost works. But yeah, so I guess you have to look at the ends of the line here to see that this is the one that actually goes on the carb, and then this one goes down into the tank. Now, I don't know how. Okay, well, I did manage to get the fuel line in there, and the fat part of it, yeah, is coming up and meeting up with the nipple here, with the smaller hole. So let's see if we can get this hooked up here and just see how bad it is. I mean, that's not too bad. You probably actually want it longer like that. So here's the final kind of look at it there. You know, it's got that nice twist in it. But the problem is now there's just no way to get a fuel filter on here, because the fuel line is so short. This must not be the right part number. So don't always believe what you read on the internet. It said it was for an 028 Stihl. It's just not. It's never gonna reach down to the bottom and do what I need it to do down there. Well, maybe there's some combination of this line and that line that I can make work, because that is just not a good solution. Yeah, I don't know why they would. If you know what model Stihl chainsaw just needs that much fuel line. Maybe I can stick this on the inside of this. There we go. Ingenuity. Yeah, so that actually fits in there perfectly. I'm just going to run this little piece of line into this little piece of line, and then have it cut it to length, you know, where it makes sense. Gotta do what you gotta do, man. That's the bad thing about the Stihl stuff, the older Stihl stuff. You know, it's got proprietary a lot of stuff, right? Impulse line is typically proprietary. Fuel line, definitely proprietary. Of course, the intake boot, and then the seals, of course. But there is some aftermarket for this one. Luckily enough, I did find a set made in Taiwan. I've had good luck with these sets. I don't know what brand they are, but they're, you know, made in Taiwan. Both of the crankcase seals there, you know, the middle seal there, and then, of course, your base gasket and exhaust gasket. So, one other thing I did want to check while I've still got the saw kind of all together here is the squish on the piston, and just kind of see where we're at, because when I originally got this saw, it was so cheap, you know, I was just like, well, I'm just gonna, you know, if it runs, I'll be lucky type of situation, you know. And it didn't end up running, but there again was the proprietary fuel line issue. Couldn't readily find one, so, but wasn't real interested in seeing like what kind of performance mods I could do or anything like that. Yeah, I mean, there's still a bunch of carbon in the cylinder, and you know, it didn't seem like a good candidate for porting or modifications. But if you're working, again, on a budget and trying to get your firewood cut, you want something cheap to start with and then work your way up from there. Yeah, we're looking 35 thousandths to 45 thousandths, maybe right at the end there. There's kind of a narrow squish band area where it's coming to 35. So if I was gonna do anything to this, it would be a base gasket delete on there. Try to get closer down to that 20 thousandths or less. On something this small, you aren't going to have the expansion that you might on something bigger. But okay, we've got that all sorted out. Yeah, old mighty spark plug. If it works, it works, right? Well, here again, this being one of the first, you know, professional, non-professional type of chainsaws that Stihl has kind of produced, first of the newer generation, we've got our standard T27, yeah, T27 hex heads on here, or a Torx head, whatever you call those. And the reason I'm taking this off, we've got our flywheel right behind here, and then behind that is going to be our crank seals. Oh man, I forgot how much work these videos are, and this, you know, working on chainsaws and stuff, to actually keep you guys involved in, you know, a step-by-step kind of do-it-yourself process. But yeah, good compression on this guy. I didn't do too much to it. As you can see here, it's still pretty dirty. But let's see if we can get this flywheel off of here. This is going to be lefty-loosey, unlike the other side, which is going to be righty-loosey. Now this does have the provisions for the actual clutch removal, or flywheel removal tool. I have at least 2 of those. I have no idea where they're at. So we will opt for the old school method of jam something behind there and hit it with something heavy. When you jar it, it's already got tension, wanting to push it off of there. So it's just slightly too big. Always keep chunks of steel on your bench here. It sounded, yes, we got it. I think it was on like the second try too. That's not too bad, is it? Alright, we got it. So a couple more tools you're going to need as you progress into this state is, of course, man, yeah, this thing you know, being not a real professional grade saw, because the CC and displacement of it was, you know, really too small for that. But yeah, this is SEM, Bosch, Germany, Stihl part number, you know, modern day Stihl stuff on there. And here's our seal, but yeah, going back to what you're going to need here, a seal puller of some sort. This is one that I made, just a sharp hook on it there. Of course, you want to look at your new parts and make sure that what you're looking at here is kind of matching up with what you're seeing there. And that does look good. Typically, it's not going to be this seal that is going to be the bad one, although sometimes it is. And this one is showing some wear. Slight amount of wear, though. You know what? Let me hold up here on this part of the process and actually get into the other seal and see how bad it is before I jump to conclusions here. Yeah, I am seeing some unusual kind of things on this saw. I mean, you know, it's an old kind of broken down saw anyway. But one of the things, like the split ring pliers that you're going to need here, most saws don't have these nowadays, or any. That big old ring, split ring that's on there, and needing a special tool for that. But yeah, this is going to have your old school style geared system in here. Actually a much more reliable oiler system than some of the modern saws today have. I think I saw online, though, where you can get, you know, the rim style sprockets set up for these. And but I also think they're kind of a pretty high price. Very intricate system. So if you've never seen one of these older style Stihl chainsaws, it's got, you know, this gear back here driving the oil pump. So anytime, you know, this is spinning, it's going to be the chain spinning the same. The clutch is behind here. But yeah, this one has this on here, and that holds, you know, the gears to mesh. And then from there, you know, you just take that off. This gear will come off of here, usually that it actually works. Yeah, there we go. Just a nice tight fit in there. And then from there, this piece comes off with some other pieces that went flying, to include a double bearing set up here. Alright, I did manage to find all the pieces. The other two components were this little flat washer and then the double bearing there. Both of those kind of went flying, but we did end up finding them both, and we're back on track. So right here, you're going to need a 19mm lefty tighty righty loosey. Was on there pretty good. Clutch, yeah, you're going to have, you know, the spring clutch, typical to the modern Stihl, again. All kind of just modern stuff on here. And then behind here, you've got this little bell, and that sits, you know, right down on there. And what am I looking at? That doesn't look like a bearing seal that I've ever seen. Okay, so here's what I'm looking at. I wanted you guys to see the same thing that I was seeing here, which is, again, one of these Stihl proprietary bearings, and on this one it appears that the seal is like built into this steel cap on that bearing. It also looks like there's a keeper ring, which you can just barely make out. Let me see if I can get a pointer in here. Right inside of this ridge here, it looks like there's a keeper ring that holds that bearing in place, and subsequently this cap. Now, for the same reason, I don't recommend the Stihl 056. The proprietary bearings just make it a no-go as far as a recommend from me, and I think this one is going to fall into that same category. Although it does look like, you know, this bearing here matches that inner and outer diameter. Am I really willing to take that risk? This bearing does still appear to be pliable. Well, I made the executive decision just to leave this seal alone. I don't feel like it is going to be a serviceable unit. And that's why I'm not really recommending this saw for like a budget type of saw. Just mainly because of the spare parts availability and the intricacy of the older design here. And without spare parts availability, it makes it very difficult to keep it maintained. So I will continue my search for the perfect chainsaw on a budget, because that's what every homesteader is ultimately going to want or need. Something that's going to be reliable, something you can work on, fix, repair, tweak, and it's also going to be friendly on your budget. That is what I am hoping to find as a recommendation from here on Man Time, you know. Well, man, I tried to bring you an episode today where we were going to try to find a perfect one-saw plan chainsaw for like the average guy just starting out, budget saw that's still going to be like that pro saw design. Unfortunately here, it's just too old. It's got too many proprietary parts on it. There isn't aftermarket support for it, and the OEM support for it is also gone. So this one you can count out to be your perfect one-saw homestead saw. So, but I did put it all back together, and I did put some fuel in it, and so let's see if it'll start. We'll try to choke it up here. And I do remember it being a good runner. I did look over both of those seals. They both looked okay. So I think my advice would be, if you've got this saw and it thumps and pulls and works for you as a chainsaw, you know, best of luck to you. But don't go out looking for one. Same with the 056. Alright, well, there you have it. This one does, in fact, run okay. I think what was happening, I was getting toward what I thought was the end of the tank. Well, it was the end of the tank. It was running out of gas. But because that fuel line was janky in there, a lot of that gas kind of seeped out while I was maneuvering the saw around. And what should have been like a quarter tank of gas was actually 3/4 of a tank of gas, because I was losing gas the whole time I was running it. So anyways, I will continue to look for the perfect homestead chainsaw one-saw plan on a budget that is the most value-friendly saw for you. And hopefully that'll be the next episode. Get out there, have you some man time too.